and welcome. I just wanted to give a quick intro to our first guest, Farrah. Welcome, Farrah. Please could you introduce yourself and maybe just give us a bit of info, so like your name, age, what you do at uni, where you're a former student, what did you study?
So I'm Farrah. I'm 22 and I'm the president of the RSU, the Students' Union. I studied here, so I graduated in July 2020 with a drama studies degree. And then I got elected and I started my role July 1st.
So was university a route that you knew that you always wanted to take? Like, what made you want to come to Roehampton specifically?
I think I didn't when I was very little, because my family were kind of one of those ones that's like, oh, uni is a waste of money and you shouldn't go unless you have to get a degree, like you want to be a doctor or something. And I knew I didn't. So for a while I was like, oh, that's just not an option for me. But I think at some point in secondary school, I can't remember really what happened, but at some point when I was doing my GCSEs, I think I hadn't really cared about school up until that point. And then I started to think, oh, maybe school's actually really important. And I think some of my friends were looking at going to uni, and then I started to look into it a little bit more. And the more I understood about what university actually is and how student finance worked, the more I started to think, maybe that's an option for me. But what's actually kind of funny is Roehampton wasn't my first choice, because my first choice was actually Royal Holloway, but then they didn't let me in because they said that I wasn't academic enough. So I came here instead. But then it sounds really cliche, but within the first week I was like, oh yeah, I know I would not fit in at Royal Holloway. I'm much happier here.
Yeah, no, I think I definitely understand where you're coming from in that sense. With me as well, before I didn't want to come to Roehampton either, so I totally get that. I even came to the open day and was like, no, still not for me. It wasn't until results day came a bit closer I was like, actually, yeah, I quite like it. And then also obviously the drama schools not accepting me played a part as well, but we're not going to talk about that just yet. So just moving on a little bit, how did you find your experience? Obviously you're a student here as well, and now you're working at the uni. Just tell us a little bit about your experience as a student, and then also maybe in your role as well.
Well, I mean, I really liked it. I don't think I would have stuck around if I hadn't. But yeah, I think I really liked it. I think I struggled a bit in my first year just because moving to London was kind of a massive shock for me. And I think it felt like a lot of things changed very fast and it was all very overwhelming. And I kind of struggled to get involved with that much stuff. But then by second year, I'd kind of started to settle in a bit more. And then because I wasn't involved in that much stuff, I started to feel really bored. So then I just signed up to everything. And I by the second half of second term or something, I was doing so much different stuff, mostly with the RSU. And then it carried on into third year to the point of just being completely ridiculous. And just forgetting I was doing an actual degree. So I think kind of by third year was when I was like, oh, hang on, I do so much stuff at this uni and I don't want it to just sort of end once I've graduated. So that's kind of how I ended up being well, maybe I want to be a SAB and then I can kind of carry this experience through to something actually quite useful.
No, definitely. And obviously that's been quite a big, that's played quite a big part then in you running for the role that you did. Obviously I've known you for 4 years now. 4 years, is it? Yeah, 4. And obviously I know that you weren't necessarily an on-campus student, were you? You lived in Spring Mews for a bit, didn't you?
Yeah, that was a bit.
Yeah.
I did in first year. I made a very, very bad decision, to be honest, because I had no concept of how much anything costs in London or what the cost of living was. And obviously because I didn't get to Royal Holloway, I hadn't kind of decided to come to Roehampton quite last minute. So I just went, blah, whatever accommodation. And that one seems nice. And I did not think about how much money I would need to eat. So that was a bad decision. Live and learn. Probably would have been better living in accommodation on campus.
Well, that was actually leading on to my question. Do you think you would have preferred it if you'd lived on campus, and do you think you would have maybe got involved with a lot more earlier than later, or do you think it would have been the same situation?
Yeah, definitely in my first year. I think things are better for off campus. I mean, I still live off campus I mean now because of staff, but second and third year I lived in a shared house with my friends, but it was a lot closer to campus than Springmuse was, because Springmuse was in Vauxhall. But I think in first year I definitely would have preferred to have lived in accommodation, because mostly for like events and things, it was always a bit tricky to kind of get to stuff, especially if it was in the evening. I think things definitely seem to be better for off-campus students now than when I was in my first year, because they've got the like microwaves and stuff and Digby diner and like lockers and things. All those things would have been really useful. And the bus to Bond Station, like that didn't come into my second year, and I was like pretty envious because like, oh, that would have been really handy.
No, definitely, I agree with that. In that sense, I think the uni's like providing so much more as well for off-campus students, and like just I feel like they've been listened to a little bit more as well. And I think if considering you were an off-campus student and now you're in like quite a big role, I feel like that comes a little bit from you as well. Like you kind of know the struggles. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I feel like you're able to facilitate. So just moving on a little bit. My next question is, so moving on to this year and your role as the second female RSU president, how did you decide to go for the role?
I think it just sort of felt like I'd done so many different things. I was a gender equality officer, and then I became NUS delegate in the by-elections. And I was a bystander. I was part of the events team sometimes. I was a chicken volunteer with Roehampton. And I started a drag society, and I've been in players. But I was kind of like, well, okay, I think I've covered all ground of what the RSU do in like my second year. So at that point, I was like already friends with Dan, who was the previous president, and I'd kind of seen what he did. I was friends a little bit with like George and Levi, and I thought like what they did seemed really cool. I thought I've got some experience like in all of these areas. That means I could probably do kind of a good job, I'd hope. I knew that I didn't want to run if Dan reran, because then I found out he wasn't going to rerun. I was like, oh, okay, then I don't have to run against my friends, so let's go.
No, definitely. So yeah, just going on that as well. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a minute then. So like, did the thought of you being like the second female president, like obviously I'm asking this in a particular just because I wasn't aware that there'd already been a female RSU president, obviously because it was before I'd come to the university. And I think as well, I've kind of kept up with it a little bit more because I've known you like personally. I've like gone through university with you. Did that thought like cross your mind? So like, did the thought of you being the second female president worry you in any way, or do you think that it like motivated you more, or like, or did it just not play a part? Like I know sometimes that thought doesn't even cross your mind in a sense that, oh, I'm going to do it because I'm a female and I can go for it. But just like, what was your thought process on that?
I think when I decided I was going to run, I didn't know that I was going to be the second. I didn't know how many female presidents there'd been before, but I knew that there hadn't been one in my time at uni, because like our first year was Choo Choo's first year, and then he reran, and then it was Dan. So we'd only ever, and also, unless I remember this wrong, yeah, no, I think the whole time we'd been at uni, there'd only ever been male SABs, so it wasn't even just the RSU president. I think the whole sabbatical team had all been male. Or at least in my third year, it was Dan, George, and Levi. So it was something I kind of thought of. I didn't know that I was the second. I'd hoped that there'd been more before me. And I kind of didn't know that I was the second until I'd already won. But I don't know. It was something that occurred to me. I kind of thought, okay, I don't know how many there's been before, but it's been a while since there's been any female SABs. And I know that we're 70% female campus, so I'd quite like to see that change. So it's kind of like a mix of like, oh, I'd quite like to do it because as gender equality officer as well, so like that played a part into like, oh, that would be quite cool just to give some women a bit of representation. But I was also a little bit nervous, mostly when it came to elections more than anything else, because I kind of worried that like, I don't know, what if like a guy runs against me and he ends up winning, because I don't know, maybe people think that men are a better leader than women, or they think that he just from appearance alone would be more suited to what they think a RSU president should look like. But I think once I won, that kind of just went out the window, because I was like, well, I've won now. So even if you think a man would do a better job, you're stuck with me for a year. And then, and then also because Lauren won, I also kind of helped. And after I won, I found out that I was the second, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go get chatting to Siobhan then.
And Farrah, I just wanted to chip in there. So you guys actually haven't heard me yet, so it's Orla here. But this is absolutely in no, please don't take this in the wrong way, but funny enough, when I was voting for elections last year, I didn't really know you, I didn't know the other person who was running, but I had that same experience. I'd always seen males in the sabbatical roles, and I honestly just voted for the female. You know, I knew nothing about it. I didn't look into it. I'm sorry to say, but genuinely, I think there was that opinion across the board that actually we needed more female representation in the role, and I think it's great that we ended up getting it.
I'm very glad that you think it's great.
I definitely agree with all of that. Like, obviously, again, same thing. We've, well, from what we can remember anyway, I've only had experience, like, I only remember there being male SABs. So I think if, like, a few of us have had that opinion when we were voting and when, like, elections happened and stuff, that, yeah, we're going to vote for you because you're female, like, there must have been loads of students that thought like that, because, again, like you said, like, the majority of the uni, I think, don't quote me on this, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it like 70-30 ratio or something, that to women to men on site, which I think is absolutely insane. Like, that's a crazy ratio. But again, a lot of people might have had that, and I think it does definitely play a part, because I think men and women do tend to have, like, different things that they focus on as well, don't they? I mean, I'm not sure if I'm the only person that thinks that, but apparently not. If people are saying they did vote just because you're a female as well, which is quite nice, I think, in itself. Because
that's what moves really nicely.
Yeah, because I think you just mentioned as well that you were worried that, oh, if a male runs against me, people might vote for him because they think that's what a president should be. But clearly not. People think that it should be you, Farrah. There you go.
Exactly. It wasn't just to say that you're a female, it's about, you know, actually what can you do in the role. And I suppose that brings us to the question, you know, what have you been up to this year? What's been going on?
Well, I think so I had like 6 manifesto points when I started, and I think 3 of them were kind of like practical stuff that I kind of pretty much ticked off, and then the other 3 were more like general overarching themes or goals, whatever. The other thing is that when I wrote it, the manifesto as well was before coronavirus, so that did kind of affect things. Okay, I've got it written down so I don't actually say something wrong. Hang on. So like the 3 that are basically done are the progress flag. So I got a progress flag up on the main gate. That's up now. I went up Trans Awareness Week, which is like the end of November, and basically there was a pride flag there last year, and then there was a big storm and it blew it away. So I thought, well, we've got to replace the pride flag anyway. We'll get the one that's progress flag, because it's got like the trans colors on it. It's got one that represents like the BAME community, and it's sort of in an arrow to show like progress going through. So that's up, so that's cool. And then the sanitary pad project, which was really, really exciting. There's now 3 sanitary pads in the library, and the university has given the RSU £300 more budget a year, but that £300 gets ring fenced to be specifically for the project, which means that will allow for the project to continue after I've stopped being the RSU president. So it doesn't just fall apart in like a year or 2. So that's very exciting. And then the other one was the diversity calendar I made. We're currently trying to get it onto the new RSU website. So we're trying to embed it into the like events page, so people can see when it's like Black History Month or Women's History Month or Trans Awareness Week and stuff like that. So that's cool. There are 3 big things I think I've done.
Yeah, no, that's great. Could we maybe press you a little bit more on the period poverty campaign? So, you know, where did this idea come from, and do you have any idea of how it's been received, maybe?
Yeah. So it was kind of an idea I had when I was gender equality officer, but I had like no idea really how to go about it, and I kind of didn't have the time or resources. But the idea kind of came along because I kept going to the library to do to like get bosh an essay out or something, or like try and find some books. But I'd be planning to sit in the library for a couple of hours, and then a couple of times my period would just arrive, and I'd be like, oh great, well I didn't bring anything with me. I wasn't expecting this to happen. I live off campus as well, so it's kind of a giant pain in the ass, because now like if the student shop's already closed, like when the library's 24 hours, I'd have to just go home then and go get sanitary products and then come back, and I'll lose potentially like an hour or so time that could be spent writing my essay. I kind of chatted to more and more friends and more like students when I was gender equality officer about it. I found that I wasn't the only one. There's lots of people I know who have periods. It's just like an added thing that if you're a student who has a period, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And then the more I looked into it online, then there's like loads of research about how period poverty specifically affects like students and women our age, or students of any gender identity of our age, and the impact that it can have on your education, especially in university. I was like, right, well, we're 70% female as well, so that means like we could assume that roughly around 70% of our students currently have periods, and I wouldn't want them to be at a disadvantage. I put the whole university at a disadvantage academically, but like just on an individual level, like that's not right, is it? So kind of went about figuring out how to do it.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because I think normally when we think of period poverty, or perhaps this is naive of me, but I generally seem to think of people who just can't afford sanitary products at all, and who don't have any access to it. And generally in the UK the consensus is that that's not the case, but I think we don't realise that these things can still affect people whether they can afford pads or not. I think period poverty is so much more, and I think you've shown really well how it can affect people, and you've done a really good campaign, as in what can we do about this to help women and students on campus. And I think it's been a really great incentive. I wonder if there's maybe any role models in particular that you have, or is there anyone you look up to, or is it just a general push within yourself to go for all of this?
I don't know, to be honest. I feel like there's quite a lot of people that I kind of look up to, but also I have a kind of a habit of like, I can't see anybody do something that I find interesting without wanting to do it myself. So it's not really any one specific person. Is if I see someone do something cool, I'm immediately like, oh, how did they do that? I want to do that. I'm going to do that now. Just kind of anyone, everywhere, all the time.
Okay, yeah, no, that's great. And I suppose just in general, I mean, moving on from that, then what is your experience of being a female, just in the world? Is there anything that you feel you may want to go on to do, or anything in the future? I suppose the question is, how content are you?
Pretty content now. I like kind of have a feeling of like I'm doing exactly what I want to do right now. Obviously I'm kind of going to want to go do other stuff in the future, because can't be a SAB forever, unfortunately. Probably would if I was allowed to. But I think in the future, kind of considering doing a master's, probably not at Roe, just because I feel like I've spent a long time here by the time I finished being a SAB. And also because I think the more I think about it, I do kind of want to go back into drama, but also want to do writing. Yeah, I think the one big thing in terms of like sort of female like gender equality stuff is I'm very interested in like how female characters are written in like film and TV and games and stuff, and like cartoons. So that's kind of something I want to go into in the future, is like maybe writing for screen or stage and stuff, and trying to write better female characters, because I think the more I see badly written female characters, the more irritated it makes me. It's a pretty good summary of my experiences. Generally great and super empowering, especially when you're surrounded by other awesome women and you see all these different things that women can do, but also super frustrating when you see women not being portrayed right, or really two-dimensional characters being written by men is very frustrating to me. So I kind of want to go fix that once I stop being this.
Yeah, no, that's it. I suppose you could have a whole conversation on those kind of topics. I mean, there's so much to be said, isn't there? Yeah, I mean, it's been great having a chat. And is there anything maybe that students can see or look forward to this year? Is there any projects coming up with you? Any sneak previews?
I think the main thing I'm focusing on now is trying to expand the period poverty project to Whitelands. I recently walked around Whitelands, tried to count how many toilets they have. Their toilets are laid out in a slightly different way to the library, so I think it's going to present its own challenges, but I'm hoping that I can get that sort of sorted by the end of the year, and then get some students together to sort of start the period poverty project into like a volunteer group. So that should be starting soon. So I mean, anybody listening to this, if you're interested in distributing some sanitary pads around the library, keep an eye out, probably on Instagram. And then yeah, I've got a security workshop conference thing happening in April as well. But I think that's the main things.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Is there any final remarks? I wonder, Raz, do you have anything that you might like to close with? I think this has been great. So thank you, Farrah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I just wanted to applaud you. And like, honestly, I follow obviously your work account on Instagram, and I absolutely love the content. Like, you're really engaged with the students, and like, it's not that the content has to be perfect. It's very much like, I think there was a picture of you yesterday, was it? And it was literally just you in a mask at Whitelands counting toilets. Like that was it. It was just, oh yeah, I'm here counting toilets. And I was like, I know exactly what she's doing it for. And it's really nice because we get updates about it. So it's not like we're waiting as students to then see the final result. We're very much, we're on that journey with you. And I think that's really lovely and really important, because you're obviously doing it for the students, and it's nice for them to be able to see how you're doing it and what you're doing. And I think that just kind of gives them the chance to maybe engage with it a little bit more as well. I know I've done it a few times for you. Like, if I've seen something on your story, I'm like, Farrah, this looks amazing, and I'm like popping up to you and like messaging you. But yeah, that's all I have to say. So Orla, I'm handing it back to you.
That's so nice.
No, I think it's been really great, and thank you, Farrah. Yeah, Farrah, do you have any maybe last comments, or maybe some advice to students who might be listening to this and thinking, oh, I'd love to do something like that, or just some final words before we go?
I mean, I want to say a big thank you. This has been really nice. I don't know. I guess like the only advice for students is like, it sounds cliche, but like, if you want to do it, like, you can literally just go do it. Like, you can figure stuff out. I don't know, like, don't just write off ideas that you have immediately. Like, really do just kind of explore how possible something is. I think a lot of things are more possible than people give them credit for. I think sometimes people think of a hurdle and immediately just go, well, I can't do it. Like, no, explore all of your ideas, like, all the way through. Like, don't give up until you actually really can't do it. Because, like, I don't know, sometimes things are actually a lot easier than they think they are before you start doing them. So just do stuff. And also, if you ever need help with anything, tell me, Nick and Lauren. We will help you with anything.
Yeah, no, of course, these are all the contacts for everyone listening to have. And I think that's the general big piece of advice from all of us, is to just get involved and do what you can. And we'll all be here along to help. And that's what this podcast is aiming to highlight. So thank you, Farrah, and thank you, Raz, for this episode. And we will see you guys soon.